everyone. This is your host, Brittany, and thank you for joining me on this week's episode of PCAT and Pre-Pharmacy Podcast, where we talk about everything pharmacy from the pre-pharmacy journey to life after pharmacy school. Now, I know it's been a while. However, I am truly appreciative of all of your support. I still see that older episodes are getting played, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Please remember to share this with anyone and continue to listen. I have a plethora of things that are coming up. So for this week's episode, I have a guest who is a pharmacist with extensive experiences in pharmaceutical sales, academia, and research. We discuss the importance of mentorship and interesting facts on residency and fellowships that you might not know. And we discussed so much more. I promise this episode is loaded with gems. So take a minute and get a piece of paper and a drink because I promise this episode is so juicy. I was even taking notes. But before we get started with the show, I want to remind you to check crackpcat.com for all of your study materials. There are testing dates posted for July, September, October, and even the beginning of next year. So now is a great time to start studying. Crack PCAT provides user-friendly virtual learning environment that allows you to access the platform from any supported device. This virtual learning space allows you for a test day experience with computer-based practice exams and hours of virtual tutorial videos. So that is crackpcat.com. And for my listeners, I have a discount code, which is podcast, and you will get 10% off the Crack PCAT software. So that is PODCAST. You put that in the discount code box and you will get 10% off. So enough of me rambling. Let's get on with the show. All right. Thank you, Dr. Hylick, for joining me. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. I've been looking forward to chatting with you, so I'm excited about it today. So a little bit about myself. I think that's kind of the age-old question that people get asked, and you never know how to really describe yourself. So I'd say I'm a little bit of a dreamer and a doer and a calculated risk taker. Most of all, a servant leader, but in the background, I've always been a teacher and an equalizer, and I am a mom and a daughter and a sister and a and a pharmacist above all things, a sister and a friend. So I think that's in essence who I truly am. How I've gotten to be those things will probably be linked to my background. And so I am a native of Albany, Georgia. I am a 2003 graduate of Fort Valley State University in Fort Valley, Georgia, and a 2011 graduate of Florida A&M University College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, now COPS IPH. I have completed both years of residency, so PGY 1 and 2, the first year at Howard University Hospital. At the time, it was considered just pharmacy practice or more like an internal medicine experience. And I attained my teaching certificate there and then went on to complete a pharmaceutical industry fellowship with Eli Lilly and Company in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that was focused in pediatric capabilities. Probably about 3 to 6 months into that experience, I really missed being at the bedside. So that's when I went back in to do the second residency, and that was at Children's National. It's now Children's National Health System, formerly CNMC, in Washington, D.C. as well. And that was with an emphasis in critical care. And after that, I jumped into the career arena, and my first job was at Xavier University College of Pharmacy in New Orleans, Louisiana, as an assistant professor. And in internal medicine, had a practice site at Tulane Medical Center. And that's how I really got jump started into the profession and the career. And here I am.
Oh, wow. So interesting. Like your background was so interesting to me when I was researching you for questions and things like that. But we'll get into that.
Absolutely. Dig away. Ask all you want. I'm an open book.
Okay. So how did you become interested in pharmacy?
Oh gosh, the short answer is my grandmother. I came home from work one day. At the time, I was working at Walgreens Pharmacy. I had been working there probably about 4 months, And I came home one day and my grandmother told me she wanted me to be a druggist.
Okay.
And true story. And I really thought that I thought she was a little crazy. And I was like, yeah. I was like, Grandma, I don't know that I want to count pills for the rest of my life. But again, this was me being very ignorant to
Yeah.
what the field of pharmacy truly entailed. And I did it. I pursued it that first year just to kind of appease her and to be respectful. But in the background, I did start doing my own research about what that looked like and if I were to pursue that for a career, because I was always interested in healthcare and science. I fell in love with science in the 7th grade. It was earth science. I'll never forget my teacher's name. And we dissected an earthworm. And that's when I was sold out after that. And so that's how I ended up pursuing the biology degree. I thought I wanted to be an MD. I really wanted to do OB-GYN, and I realized I did not want to be on call. I wanted to have a family of my own, and I was going to have to sacrifice the dreams of being Cliff, but Claire. And so healthcare is what was still calling me. I got the job at Walgreens after graduation, and my grandmother made that statement, and that's what pulled me back in. I started doing my own research, and I actually took a step back between my undergraduate degree and going to pharmacy school. And I went to my local tech school. So I went to Albany Technical College in Albany, Georgia for about 9 months and did a pharmacy tech training program. And that is where I was like, yeah, this is it.
Okay, great. Because that's a great segue into my next question. I want to know a little bit about your pharmacy journey. You did mention you didn't go straight to pharmacy school after. Are there any experiences that that you look back on in pharmacy school and just think that it kind of led your career in the way it is now?
Oh, absolutely. So getting to pharmacy school, I would tell you the one thing I think is most important is just being resilient. It took me 3 years to get into pharmacy school. It was highly competitive. And I know it, even so, it still is, but it was highly competitive at the time. The first year I applied, I only applied to one school, which again was kind of just to check the box to give my grandmother some peace that I had actually pursued it. And the second year, I really went full force and I got waitlisted that year. And I think I applied to like 9 or 10 schools that year and I got waitlisted. And I remember being devastated and feeling defeated. And I remember just kind of praying about it. And I was like, Lord, I'm gonna give this one more chance. And I need for you to make this so plain to me that this is what I'm supposed to be pursuing. And I did. I went through the application cycle again that next year. Um, I built all kinds of network connections and really did a lot of research and just tried to diversify myself to go into the application process. And that year I got accepted into 2 schools and my number one choice was Florida A&M. So when I got the acceptance, that was it. It was no question. Um, so that was kind of the journey getting to pharmacy school. Um, clarify your question for me about being in pharmacy school, because I can go a lot of different ways with that response.
Well, I have one more question before we get into the pharmacy school part.
Sure. Ask as many questions as you want.
So you said you did some researching and networking while you were trying, like your last time attempting to get into pharmacy school, because this podcast I really focus on like the non-traditional route, only because that's my experience. I did a non-traditional route of getting into pharmacy school as well. Um, what kind of well, I'm sure the schools probably didn't just tell you, well, this would help you get into school, but can you think of anything that you did regarding the networking and things like that
Oh,
helped you?
absolutely. And I know this is gonna sound, um, it may sound like I'm downplaying it a little bit, but I absolutely didn't do anything that was incredibly extensive. Like, I think I may have, I'm sure I had a strong like letter of intent and I think I had a pretty good interview. But bottom line, I really feel like a lot of it played into who I knew. And so it just so happened that that year that I was applying, by this time I had transitioned and started working at CVS in Albany. And my district manager at the time was a FAMU grad. And she knew that myself and another coworker, we were interested. We had already applied. Also, I still held my ties with my director or the program director from Albany Tech. She was a FAMU grad. And so they both knew I was pursuing this. My district manager at the time actually allowed us to take a day off. She took us down to the campus and walked us up to the office, and we met people who were actually going through the applications at the time. So it was the chance to put a face with many names, and vice versa. So they were able to put our faces with our application. And having that 15 or 20 minutes of FaceTime, I think made a world of difference, because in that moment, that day, I was just expecting to kind of just get a feel for the school. And that was the day I found out that I had been selected for an interview. So
Oh,
I wish I had like this really elaborate step-by-step approach to say, this is what you should do and you should be guaranteed. But really, it was, I think, all of the work of it was a village, and it was knowing people who had amazing relationships and ties, and being able to just be authentically me and show up and let these people see me. And I think that is what probably affirmed them saying, yeah, we want to at least bring her in for an interview.
okay, great. Thank you. Okay, now, in regard to once you got into school, were there any like organizations or projects or anything that kind of, I mean, I guess every day in pharmacy school reaffirmed you a little bit that that is what you want to do. But is there anything that kind of like just stands out that kind of just affirmed, yes, a rotation or something? This is where I'm supposed to be.
So I would say probably my second year in pharmacy school is when I got involved with PLS.
Mhm.
And that was a game changer for me. I remember saying in my PLS interview that I wasn't really a leader. I was just kind of, I wanted to fly under the radar, and I just wanted to support people. And I remember our sponsor at the time kind of chuckling in the interview. And 2 years later, actually the next year, I was the president of the organization. And I had an amazing e-board, and we really took the organization to new heights. And I really think that was probably a turning moment for me, because it allowed me to find my voice and be comfortable with that and being in a leadership position, because I was always one of those people. I didn't necessarily want to be out front. I could flourish well out front, but it's not something that I necessarily wanted to do. I didn't have that desire. Um, so I think that was a turning point for me. In terms of the profession, I think my P3 year, when I took my pediatrics elective, was the professional turn point for me, because I entered pharmacy school. Again, I already had a bachelor's degree, and I had already worked for like 3 years before I got in. So my goal was to get in, get the PharmD, go back home and work in retail or hospital, which were the only two options in my small town at the time. And I took that elective, and probably 3 weeks into that class, I realized, all right, I want to do peds. And I knew that was going to require me doing a residency. After that, there was no plan. Everything else in terms of the fellowship, the second residency, that was not planned. It all just kind of happened as I went, and it worked out well, incredibly well. If I had tried to plan that, I couldn't have planned it any better.
Oh, great. Okay, so let's move along in your like kind of training career, I guess you'd say. Now, you said that you completed a residency and a fellowship, and I believe even myself at one point in time that some people were thinking you do one or the other.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, that is true, and I appreciate you sharing that, being transparent, saying I thought I could only do one or the other, and I can say I am here to dispel that myth. You can absolutely do both. Do I feel like you need both? No, I don't feel like you need both. Do I feel like you need one or the other? I don't think you need them. Do I think they are incredibly valuable and present a set of advantages that you wouldn't have if you did not complete one? Absolutely. I do think it sets you apart from the crowd, and I do think you get a certain skill set from either one of those experiences that you won't necessarily get through didactic training or just in your P4 year.
Okay.
Um, I think you have to make the choice on what's a better fit for you, whether it's doing residency or fellowship. And then also, let me be clear, fellowship can be divided into two buckets. You can do a pharmaceutical industry fellowship, or you can do a research based fellowship. So, pharmaceutical industry fellowship, again, is going to be pretty much associated with companies you see in big, middle size, and small pharma. And you'll go in and you'll essentially be an employee for those companies in certain areas, whichever areas they have assigned that particular year. And you will be a devoted employee to those companies. If you decide to do research, then that means that you're probably doing a one, and both of these can be anywhere from 1 to 2 years in length, depending on the company and just their individualized structure. What makes the research fellowship unique is that you will end up going to, it's most likely associated with organizations like the NIH. And so you would go there and be a part of research teams that are working on either previously identified projects or projects that may be up and coming, and you're helping to develop those ideas. And you would be devoted to that for 2 years. And that typically comes along with not only the research and the investigation, but also maybe being involved with some clinical trials, maybe also doing some publications, writing and publications and things like that. So it's a unique experience based on which route you take. There are the same levels that are associated with residency. Residency is not just hospital based anymore. There are various facets that you can go into with residency now. And even there are some residencies that you can go directly into a specialty area as opposed to doing the first year general practice, if you will. But I think in order to determine which route to go, because like I said, you don't have to just commit to one. You have to ask yourself the question initially: what do you love?
Okay.
What are you passionate about? If you are that person or that student who goes on your IPPEs or your APPEs and you absolutely loathe being in the hospital, you absolutely despise getting up, going every day to be on rounds and looking at clinical labs and trying to work through those cases, residency probably is not for you, because residency is literally, the best way I can describe it is literally your fourth year of pharmacy school taken and rolled up into one and boosted on steroids. That's that's what the 4 years of pharmacy school, not just the fourth year, the 4 years is taking all of those 4 years, rolling into one, boosting it on steroids, IV push. That's what it's like. And so you really have to be sold out and passionate about that, because it's like drinking from a water hose all year long. And when you finally get comfortable and fluent in your own skin and like your skill set, you're getting ready to move on. Um, but you do have to be willing to kind of make those sacrifices. In terms of fellowship, if you're not a person that has a strong desire to be at the bedside, but you still want to make your contribution, you still want to touch the professional space in terms of pharmacy or in terms of medical affairs or something like that, you want to be able to impact the patient, but not necessarily be at the bedside or in direct patient care, then industry may be something, or fellowship may be something you want to consider. I think either way, you need to talk to people who have done it so that they can give you some additional insight to make the best choice for yourself.
Okay.
Does that
And
answer the question?
definitely.
And if I'm long-winded, just tell me.
Oh,
Okay.
no. You're providing a lot of information that I need and the listeners definitely need. So you are fine.
Absolutely.
And for just to be clear for the listeners, residency, you have to apply for both years if you decide to do.
Absolutely. You have to apply for both years of residency. Typically, so in the fellowship, you will know upfront when you start the application process if that company or if that organization is a 1 or 2 year commitment. You'll know that straight out of the gate. With residency, all of your residency commitments are majority are going to be that 1 year. Now, there are some programs that are dual programs, and so you will get and typically I see it with like administration, hospital administration experiences or residencies that are associated with obtaining a second degree. So you could actually go in and do, let's say, hospital administration. It's a PGY1, PGY2, and then it also comes with a master's. So that's a 2 year commitment to that organization. And that information you can find out easily straight out of the gate as well. If you just go to the ASHP website and you look at their directory, which I highly recommend if you're thinking about residency programs, just to kind of get a good feel of, where these programs are located, what the bedside of the hospital is like, who are, who are your preceptors that are going to be in these experiences, and getting a good feel for what rotations they might offer and what the requirements are, because the requirements will, for the most part, be the same across the board because they're all based off of ASHP accreditation status. But there will be some, for instance, if it comes with that master's degree, then you're looking at a different way of splitting your time. So that might mean a different type of commitment as opposed to just someone who's going into a PGY1 and they're like PGY1 and done, if you will. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but so you can get a master's
Oh,
out of
absolutely. Absolutely. I have a really good friend of mine. He actually did um a pharmacy administration um residency at Ohio State. He did 2 years and he got his master's in healthcare administration at the end of that 2 years.
Oh, wow, that is definitely new news for me and very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, if you go out and you can filter it on the ASHP website to see what those programs are, and they'll tell you, it's 2 years in length. They'll tell you how many residents they take each year. They'll tell you, of course, their ASHP status, whether they're accredited, non-accredited, or if they're like a new applicant. You'll see all of that. You'll see who the residency program director is. It gives you all of that information and what a graduate of that program, what that entails. So in this case, that would be a 2 year residency completion, two-year certificate for residency completion plus a master's degree.
I have to write that one down. Okay. And
Hashtag you game.
yes. And also, so if you do like a program, a residency that has like 1 year commitment, you don't have to do the second year if you choose at the same location?
No, so okay, so with residency, when you enter into the ASHP match and you match with a program, it is considered a binding contract. And you are expected to be there and to fulfill the program and all of the requirements associated with that program. So if you match with a program that is a 2 year program, you will complete both years at that institution, unless something egregious happens and they have to transfer you to like a sister organization, or if for some reason the program loses its accreditation status. Like, it'd have to be something just major for you to not complete the second year at that same institution.
Okay. Very interesting. I did not. I knew a little bit about residency because I want to do one, hopefully. But I did not know all of that. But thank you so much for sharing.
No, I think that is I thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people, they say they don't know, and just I think transparency is very important, because sometimes you just need to be reminded that other people are sitting in the boat with you. I'm If you're thinking about residency and or fellowship, my strong advice to anyone that is starting to kind of run those thoughts through their mind is to get a mentor. Get a mentor that you can have true, candid conversation with. And it is desirable that your mentor is someone who has done or is doing exactly what you think you want to do, because they're going to be able to walk you through the process step by step and help you to um, avoid making some of the same mistakes, or to avoid having to face some challenges that they faced, because they already know. They can already anticipate it. They can already tell you where the hiccups are going to be, and help you avoid making those same mistakes. And hence, you don't waste your time. Hence, you become a better candidate, and you have a better experience. So, if you do not have a mentor, get one
Yes, I
immediately.
hear that a lot. I'm working on it.
Immediately. And it's okay to have more than one. You should have more than one mentor. You should have mentors that are effective in various areas in your life. And you'll have some mentors that will be short term, and some that will be long term, some that will be only for your career, and that will be, personal and professional. And you'll determine what that looks like as you continue to carve out your path, moving along personally and professionally. However, I think it's good to just at least start out with one as a student that will kind of help you to encompass everything that you need to, or that you would like to accomplish in the next, 2 to 3 years, just depending on where you are in the program, because it will make a world of difference. Um, so, yeah, I stand by that.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now we're going to move along to like some of your working experiences. When I was doing my research, I don't know, I just I have so many questions, but it looks like
You
you have
can
like
ask all of them.
you have experience in like pharmaceutical sales in academia, within these different specialty areas. I guess my question is, because my brain isn't, I don't know, I have so many different interests in different things. And sometimes people tell me I need to find one thing to really like or something. But I don't know, just from looking at your experiences, it looked like you were able to encompass a little bit of what you liked
Oh, yeah. I have
into
definitely
one lifetime.
I have definitely pivot across the profession. um, so I would tell you, in the nicest way, in the most gracious way possible, when people tell you, "Oh, you just need to pick one thing and stick to it," they lied. um, you do not, by any means, have to feel obligated to stay in one lane in this profession. Now, is it easy to pivot? Absolutely not. It does require that same amount of discipline and hard work and networking and sacrifice that it takes as you get through pharmacy school. It's the same thing. It's just that you're not doing those things in the classroom. You're applying that same skill set in your career. And it's in overdrive, because you're not working with a closed group of people anymore. You're working against America,
Yeah.
because you're competing against, other people from other backgrounds, and, that have a different level of experience. So every day in the profession is a it's an experience, and it is a competition, and so you always have to be on your A game. I will say that I was very strategic and intentional as early as my P3 year, when I selected my rotations, to ensure that I had experiences all across the board. So I made sure that I secured at least one industry rotation, that I secured at least one solid research experience. And we were required to do research at the time at FAM. I wanted to make sure that I had published that year, and I was able to do that. I needed to make sure that I had all of the boxes checked in terms of our required rotation. So that's like ambulatory care, internal medicine, things like that. And then I knew that I still had that interest in peds. And so I made sure that I was able to secure the pediatrics elective. So I was very, like I said, just very intentional about making my P4 year very diverse,
Mhm.
so that when it came down to me applying for residency, no one would be able to look at my CV and say, oh, well, she didn't have any experience or any exposure in XYZ area that I was applying for. And I kind of kept that same mindset as I moved through applying to residency and fellowship, and then as I transition over into my full-time career. So that's always kind of been at the back of my mind. That's always been what's helped me to separate myself from the crowd, and just being able to really identify, okay, yes, I've touched a lot of different areas within the profession, but what are the transferable skills that I got from one experience or another? And I can take those and package them and sell myself or brand myself appropriately to go into the next role that I want. So that's been key. And then just, I can't say this enough, networking and knowing people and having people drop your name at the table and speak for you when you're not in the room. That's been hugely successful in my career, because there are just some opportunities I know I may not have had I not been connected to the right people.
Okay. Thank you. I do have an additional question for that.
Sure.
I'm going to wait until after I talk about your current role.
Okay.
Know a little better. But so let's talk about your current role as a medical science liaison. Like for a pharmacist or someone with like a pharmaceutical background, what does that entail?
Um, so the medical science liaison, the simplest way to describe it is that you are the face of the company in the field, talking directly to what we call thought leaders or key opinion leaders. So these are the people who are most influential, or they are the cream of the crop in their specialty areas. And so the medical science liaison is the voice of the company. We get everything. We work closely with internal, the sector is called medical affairs. We work closely with them to ensure that everything that we want to communicate in terms of what we do for patients, and how we operate in our clinical studies, and what our product portfolio looks like and what we can offer. We work closely with them to make sure that message is coming across in the community as we talk to um, like your healthcare providers, as we talk to people who we consider national speakers, as we talk to, um, and a key opinion leader is someone who's very influential. They have a lot of what we would call face time. So a lot of people in that specialty area kind of look up to them because they are a mentor, if you will, or they might be an innovator or a leader in that space. And so we try to build relationships with them to ensure that the messaging they get about our products is fair and balanced and is coming from a trusted source. So I would say that the medical science liaison is a role where you have to be confident, you have to be sold out for being married to the clinical data. You have to be committed to staying on top of what's new, what's changing, what's evolving, who's new on the scene, what's going on in your territory, um, what's going on with competitors. You have to be flexible, because a lot of times you may have a territory that's as small as one state, or in my previous role, it had grown to 8 states prior to me changing companies. You have to be willing to travel. You have to be flexible in terms of time, because there are going to be, especially so for instance, in my previous role, I covered 2 time zones. So even though I live on the East Coast and you think that my day ends at 5 p.m., well, if I still support physicians or other field based colleagues until their 5 p.m., well, I'm on the clock for another, 1 to 2 hours until their day ends. There are a lot of, I think a lot of people hear the medical science liaison role and they think, oh, it's great and I'm going to love it. But it really does come with its separate set of, I won't say challenges, but a separate set of things that you need to be aware of prior to pursuing this role, and understanding that when you make that commitment, it is a deep commitment, and it is a hard role to secure. And it is a role that, if you do it right, it can be incredibly fulfilling, but it takes work. It takes a lot of work. So I think if that's not something that you're ready to do, it's probably worth giving some additional thought to before pursuing it. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I do want to point out, like, your role, it's called medical science liaison. However, you have your credentials. It does, yeah. When you're looking for a job, and I've learned this in tech, being a pharmacy technician, it's not necessarily going to say pharmacy technician or pharmacist for the job title. Um, but you need, I guess, to say like the knowledge base of
The
those
credentials.
areas to do the job.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, and anyone can go on, you can look at just basic job descriptions that are out on LinkedIn. And they will typically post, if you, and it's in different places on job descriptions, but for the most part, you'll find them embedded in like the middle to the end of the description that's posted. And they'll talk about just very high level about the requirements or the credentials. And in most cases, they'll blatantly say, we're looking for a PharmD, a PhD, or an MD with XYZ experience, whatever the case may be, just depending on what role they're seeking to fulfill. Um, Additionally, they may even go into say experience preferred, experience required. If you don't have any of these terminal degrees, then you need to have, at least 5 to 10 or 15 years of experience in the specialty area. So some places will get, really specific because they want you to be able to come in and be trained to go out and represent their portfolio well, and to be able to speak the language at the same level as the providers and the thought leaders that you're going to be engaging. And so that's why the requirement is seeking those particular credentials. Does
Okay,
that make sense?
definitely, definitely. Okay, so I want to ask this. I mean, I guess this goes off of like organization, tips, and just being able to, like, I'm a first generation student, and
Mhm.
I know there are a lot, and just looking at your background, and seeing all of the things that you said you planned well ahead of time of what you wanted your P4 year to look like and things like that. Like, how do you? I guess a mentor will definitely come into play in this part, but how do you? I guess seek things, find out things you don't know you need to know.
Oh my God. Okay, so I am the only pharmacist in my family. I am the only PharmD in my family. Everyone else came from uh so all education based, I would say on the most part from my grandmother's side. So I grew up around educators, and I mean like teachers, principals, assistant principals, all the way up to superintendents. And so I grew up around that, and I always knew that, like, that was the one thing I did not want to do. So, so hence the healthcare, aside from dissecting the earthworm, hence the pursuit for healthcare. And I think for a long time, I beat myself up because I didn't have anyone in my immediate family to be able to ask those questions. And so I found myself attaching to my peers when I got to pharmacy school. And I've never shared this story with him, but I have a very close friend of mine who I met my first year of pharmacy school. He was a year ahead of me. And he made an impression on me in orientation, and it was just his presence that drew me in. And I, unbeknownst to him, started to mirror the things that he would do because people loved him. and he could draw people in. He had influence, he had impact, and he had presence. And I knew that although I embodied those things, they weren't things that I exercised on a regular basis. And I started to just kind of watch him and kind of slowly start to implement and emulate those same things. And I think that helped tremendously. So I would say that I think that when you are starting to dig into those spaces and figure out where your gaps are and how you find the information that you need, it's going to be by talking to those people. It's going to be by being very vulnerable and having a talk with yourself like I did and saying, okay, this is a gap for me. I need to work on this. And then also not being afraid to engage in conversation with people who are around you, or, a year or 2 or 3 years ahead of you. Cause I had people who were, 2 or 3 years ahead of me. And one of them I still call sensei, and he calls me grasshopper, because I would call him all the time and say, hey, when you were doing this, what was this like? And how did you do this? And when I started applying to residency, he was helping me like go through my letter of intent and passing it around to his co-residents to get feedback. And he was 3 years ahead of me. So I think you have to not be afraid to really just put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm raising my hand. I have a question. I don't know. Don't judge me. Please help me. And for the most part, people will respect that and they will help you. Now, on the backside of that, I think it is very important that there is follow through. So if you're going to try to build this relationship with someone to have them help you or guide you or help you navigate the process, it is important to be present consistently, not just reach out when you need something, but to really try to build and nurture that relationship, because you never know where that will take you, and you never know how that relationship will blossom into something more that could be beneficial for the both of you that are involved. So be very cautious of how you engage people, and making sure not to burn bridges or to wear people out by just asking and not giving anything in return. It should be very reciprocal. Does that help?
Yes. It does. I know we've covered a plethora of things, but are there any like anything else you would like to add for students, or maybe even recent graduates? Any advice to them? Just very broad, nothing.
Oh, um, I could talk for days about this, but I'm sure people are tired of listening to my voice, so I'll make it brief.
My audience said they like longer episodes, so you can.
Oh, okay. So, um, I would say if I had to narrow it down to like the top three things, just to make it easy to remember and to apply. The first thing I would say is listen to the voice in your head. Like, don't question it. If it says yes, then it's yes. If it says no, then it's no. Prime example for me, when I started applying to residency, my first year, the place that I was going to say no to, my mind said yes. It was the best decision I ever made. On the flip side, when I applied to my second year residency, the place that my mind was saying no to, I said yes, and I was miserable. So do not discount the importance and the magnitude of how impactful that voice is. That is your conscience. That is your spirit telling you something. So don't dismiss it. Don't discount it. It's there for a reason. Listen to it. Don't question it. Respect it for what it is, and then operate in that space and do it unapologetically, because there is something within you that is trying to give you a reason to either do something or not do it. And you don't have to question it. Just listen. Um, I think the second thing is just kind of avoid getting caught up in labels. So you don't have to think about, am I a traditional student or a non-traditional student? Don't allow those things to to don't tag on to those. Don't hang on to them because they become anchors. Everybody is traveling a different path. Everyone got there a different way. And I guarantee you, after you leave school, everyone's going to go a million different directions, as you can see by my professional journey thus far. So do not get caught up in the labels and thinking that you have to abide by what somebody says. Oh, when I graduate, I got to do a residency or I got to do a fellowship. No, you don't. You create your own path. You make things as traditional for you as they need to be, and not feel like, don't feel obligated or bound to having to do something that society or the profession says you have to do. No, everyone doesn't have to do a residency or a fellowship, but you have to do something. You have to get some certifications. You have to get some additional experience. You have to get an additional degree. Whatever it is that speaks to you, you have to do something beyond the PharmD to make yourself competitive in the market now. That is how severe the shift is. So you just go ahead and wrap your mind around it, that the PharmD is not the end, it is the beginning. And you're going to have to push a little bit further. And the last thing I would say is just be authentic. Like, people want to know when you start applying to internships and residencies and fellowships and jobs and all of those things, they want to see you. They want to know who you are as a person, because at the end of the day, yes, they are hiring you because of your experience and your exposure, or they see potential in you and grooming you. But at the end of the day, everything that I just said ended in the word you, because they want to know who you are. Because at the end of the day, you are showing up to work. You are a member on the team. You add value. You have had the experiences. So all of those things are very important, but they are packaged in the person that you are, and those unique experiences or characteristics or traits or cultural background, whatever it is, it's all a part of you. So allow that to come through and allow people to get to know who you are and the value that you add personally and professionally, because that whole all of that is a part of the sauce that, and this is, in the age of diversity and inclusion, it makes things so much better, and um it moves science, and it moves community and society so much further. So just be authentic. Don't be professional, but be authentically you, because at the end of the day, they are selecting you. You are part of their team. It's just like a marriage. It's just like a relationship. You choose to be bound to this person just like they choose you. So it's a two-way street. And I touched on the mentor thing. I don't think I need to beat a dead horse while it's down. But those are the things I think I would say. Oh, and one last thing. If you are a pre-pharmacy or a P1 or P2 student, do internships. It is non-negotiable. When I was in pharmacy school, we didn't need them. They didn't really talk about them. It wasn't really something that, it wasn't really something that was required. Now, if you are trying to separate yourself separate yourself as the cream from the crop, you need an internship. There are tons of internships that I see come up on LinkedIn every day. And I do my very best to try to forward them out as much as I possibly can on the most appropriate platforms and within my circles. But yes, you need an internship, hands down. It's just no question about it. And that doesn't mean that you need to do an internship in, the area that you are thinking you're going to commit to. No, you just need the exposure. You need to get that skill set outside of the classroom. And you need to be strategic in figuring out when and how you're going to do these internships, because a lot of times you're working around the way that the curriculum and the schedule at the school is structured. And so you want to be very cognizant of what that looks like, so that you can be able to apply for these opportunities. And now, I mean, there are even internships that are virtual and they're paying people. And it's like, a 6 to 8 to 12 week commitment. Why are you not doing this? If you just, if you sitting at the house and you going to, Walgreens, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you're just going to do like, work part-time in community or hospital pharmacy, you can be diversifying yourself, because this is the time to do it. So yeah, now I'm off my soapbox. I said 3 things, but I think I gave you 5. maybe 4.5.
But everything was so helpful. You definitely dropped a lot of gems. And I just thank you so much for agreeing to being on the podcast. And I'm sure the audience will love this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And feel free to share my information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you just, shoot me a text. I'm probably better at responding to text messages than anything else these days. But I am more than willing to make myself available to anyone who really just they just want to raise their hand and say, hey, I need help.
All right. Thank you. I definitely will leave your information in the description box below. And I will talk to you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to thank Dr. Hylick again for joining us on this episode and dropping so many gems. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. As mentioned before, I will leave her contact information in the description box below. Also, please remember to continue to share this podcast, like, subscribe. Please give us a rating. Also, you can find some of the previous episodes that were video recorded on YouTube, and I will leave that link below. So stay tuned for some more episodes that are coming in the next following weeks, and I will talk to you guys later.